I think this little part of my ancestor's life is really interesting, and kids would really love this story. Well, you just said kids, your audience would be kids. They tend not to like really long stories. Howdy, welcome to Write Your Family History. I'm Devin Noel Lee, and I want to help you quickly turn your names, dates, and places into non-boring family histories. You do not need to be a trained or published author to capture and preserve the memories of your loved ones, and this channel backs up that claim. So let's get into today's video. The debate over whether you should write a short story about an ancestor or a long narrative continues and will continue on for many days to come. But I'm going to share with you some decision-making steps you need to have in order to get the writing juices flowing and start filling your shelves with family history books. And granted, there's not a lot of books right there. The other books are in a different location in my house. But let's get into today's video. Is it best to write one short story at a time or a full family narrative? Honestly, it depends. It depends on how much writing experience you have, how many resources you have, and what your limitations are. So, if you've never written before, or if you think you're a terrible writer, I'm going to recommend that you write a smaller project rather than a larger project. Smaller projects are usually focused on one person and one event in their life. And guess where that starts? It starts with one document about that event in their life. Once you have done that, it's kind of like the Dave Ramsey snowball effect, or how do you eat an elephant one step at a time? You got to start with something small, and then you expand, and then you expand, and then you expand, because a lot of what you have from that first momentum of writing that story will build to the next. Additionally, once you've written about one ancestor from start to finish of their life, when you write about their spouse, you already have a good portion of their story already written. You just have to flip the focal person. So instead of talking about George, now you're going to talk about Emma and the marriage through her perspective, if you will, of being a narrator on her shoulder, following her around through her life instead of on George's shoulder. Does that make sense? If you have more writing experience, then go ahead and tackle a family. Recognize sometimes the family story is going to be taking individuals and inserting them together. And so one chapter you'll start with Emma as a child, and then you'll do George as a child, and then you bring them when they're meeting each other, and then now they're together moving forward. But oh wait, the George's mother came to live with them, or Eveline's Emma Eveline, her deceased fiance's mother moved in with them. So now you got to have a chapter about the deceased fiance's mother, which would have been her mother-in-law, but he died before they got married. And then the mother-in-law helped George and Eveline to get married. So she'll show up in that how they met story. But then when she moves in, and she can be a part of, you see what I'm saying? But you got to write the stories about an individual, and then you overlay it with the family. So the more experience you have, the better it would go. So short or long, the first question is going to be answered based on how much previous writing experience you have. Before we continue, if you're finding value in this video, be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment. I want to know that I'm giving you value, and the best way you can do that is to watch the video to the end, like the video, and then leave a comment so that I know what you like, what questions you have, and we can go on. Thanks so much, and let's get back to the video. So next, how many documents do you have? Okay. Now, how many documents you have? If you were writing about somebody in the 1980s who died in 2014, you could have a lot of documents, or you could have very few. However, when it comes to the social history, you might not need to add very much, especially if you're from the same town. But when you're writing about a German immigrant ancestor who migrated to the United States and only left 4 documents behind, Well, you're not going to have a very long story unless you augment with social history. And then you're starting to answer questions such as why would have this German have moved from an unspecified village, but the dukedom of Baden, or the I can never say Duchy. I always get stuck. But anyway, the duchy or the duchy of Baden, right? Why would he go to America? Why would he go to Ohio? Why would he go to Ohio when he's a single man who's Catholic and marry a chick who's Lutheran? And all of that in the 1860s. So the story can get longer depending on how much social history you want to add into the story and how many documents have. The more documents you have, your story will probably be longer. And then we have limitation. Now, these are limitations such as tools, timelines, um, goals that you have, maybe personal health, maybe work-life balance. What are the limitations you have? Now, if you have an entire year to work on a project, but you get sidetracked like a certain someone because she's trying to add even more social history, I really do need some limiting factors so I can actually write William's story, and then I can add more details later because it can always be a second edition, right? But you need to pay attention to what your limitations are. Additionally, where are you trying to publish it? So I talked about this on this channel before, or at least over on the flagship blog, Family History Fanatics, in the writing content. When I talked about the Stars in Our Family Tree project by the Southern California Genealogy Society, their limit was a 600-word hard stop story about an ancestor. So that could be another limitation. That's going to lend itself to a short story. But if you can write until the story's done, then maybe you'll go for a little bit longer story. The final limitation is a decision that's made after you finished your draft. And that is in the second phase, the developmental phase of deciding who is my intended audience. I often think it's best to write anything and everything possible in the drafting phase. And then when you say, oh, I think this little part of my ancestor's life is really interesting and kids would really love this story. Well, you just said kids, your audience would be kids. They tend not to like really long stories. But that doesn't mean then you could also write a second book that has more of the life of that ancestor and have a longer story. So when we get back to the question, is it best to write one short story at a time or a full family narrative? Go back to the limiting factors. One, how much writing experience do you have? Two, how many documents do you have to write about this ancestor, and then what your limitations are? Draft everything out and then choose who am I writing for and let that be your guide. There you have my ideas on what you need to consider before you decide whether you have to write a short story or a long narrative to make your family history more interesting. The floor is now yours to share your thoughts on how to make the decision or to tell us the success you have had in writing. Let's have that discussion in the comments below, and then I'll see you in the next video.